There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
This episode contains discussions of family and domestic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
So he went on to say, "This is
It's 9:35 a.m. on a cold Sunday morning in July 1985. And preacher David Winder begins a service in the Cashula Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses in Sydney's West. Graham Wykes is in the front row with his wife Joy and two of their three daughters. They're wearing big winter coats and have rugs pulled up over their knees to stop the chill. As they listen to David, Joy rearranges the rug to cover Graham's hands. He smiles and whispers in her ear, "I love you."
And Peter said to Jesus, "Who shall we go away to, Lord? Because you have sayings of everlasting life."
David continues as the clock ticks past 10 a.m.
You are the Holy One of God.
Out of nowhere, a bomb detonates underneath his podium, sending him flying through the roof.
A bomb destroys a Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Hall at Cashula, killing Graham Wykes and injuring more than
114 people are at worship that morning. Babies, children, mothers, fathers. 77 people are injured in the blast, as the building they were gathered in lies around them in ruins. There is one fatality. It's Graham. He's killed instantly from the force and proximity of the bomb. It's not the first crime of its kind. For the past 5 years, there's been a campaign of terror unleashed on the people of Sydney. 3 judges have been targeted in their homes. 4 bombs, including a 5th that's caught before it explodes, have wreaked havoc at different locations across the city.
Are you a violent man?
No, Terry, I'm not.
But the man responsible, who will become known as the family court bomber, will evade capture for another 3 decades.
What sort of a person do you think would want to kill a family court judge?
A person that was probably disturbed, very upset at the result of some family court hearing.
I'm Gemma Barth, and this is True Crime Conversations, a Mamma Mia podcast exploring the world's most notorious crimes by speaking to the people who know the most about them. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Walkley award-winning crime journalist and author Debi Marshall. Debi's been investigating the family court murders since 2012, and in 2014 released a book about this domestic terrorism crime spree in the 80s. More recently, she's turned her research on the case into a 4-part series. It's available to watch on ABC iView. Debi, what was the process of getting a divorce like prior to the introduction of the Family Court of Australia in 1976?
Oh, incredibly tough, particularly, I think, for women. Imagine this scene, women who were battered, had the courage to leave their marriage, would turn up to court and get a crusty old judge who would screech at them, "Where are your bruises? Show me your bruises." And, the divorce just wouldn't be granted until she went back to the doctor, got photographs. And women who are traumatised, or men who are traumatised, they don't think about taking photos. There were PIs crawling around windows at 3 o'clock in the morning to get a glimpse of the woman committing adultery. It was just horrendous, really. So the Whitlam initiative to bring in this no-fault divorce was a fantastic initiative in its day, headed up by the wonderful Chief Justice Elizabeth Evatt. But, as they say about it, it was born in hope but raised in poverty. And because of the lack of resources and all sorts of other issues that were going on with it, it became a failure.
Can you give us an overview of the goal of this court? The proceedings did look a bit different, didn't they?
Oh, vastly different. So in the past, there were pictures of the Queen smiling down at very unhappy litigants. I mean, divorce in itself is emotional, but going to court and having judges, screaming at you is pretty awful on top of it. And judges were sitting on the dais. They were pontificating in their robes. So what they did, it took the pomp and ceremony out of this whole notion of divorce, and the judges then put on suits and they met the common man on the floor of the courtroom. And that had, two aspects to it. One was it worked. It was a really good way of people connecting to the judge. But also, when it took away that pomp, it also took away the respect a lot. And we saw that, for example, in that terrible case of Leonard John Warwick. I mean, he was off the wall, of course, and absolutely extreme. But it was a little bit of a reflection, I think, of that lack of respect that was shown once that new family court was introduced.
What kind of marriage did Leonard Warwick have with Andrea Blanchard?
As any marriage, they went in with hope. They were in love. They married in 1974. They had their daughter Trudy quite soon after that. But things went south really early in the marriage. He had shown his violent streak before they'd married. And I said to Andrea, why did you marry him, Andrea, if you knew? And she said, Deb, I thought he'd change. And, the work I do, Gemma, I hear this story time and time again, that people hope their partners will change. And of course they don't, unless they get help, which they clearly need, and he clearly needed. So the violence just got worse and worse to the point where she had to flee for her life, and she did.
Was there a specific moment or event that eventually made her leave?
He came home from work one day. He was a fireman. He stomped all over her arm with his fireman boots on for no reason at all, according to Andrea. None at all, as if anyone should need a reason to stomp on their wife's arm or their partner's arm. It was so bad that he left imprints in her arm and she couldn't pick the baby up. She had to leave the house without the baby, and she fled to her sister's house, and then after some weeks moved back in with her father in Revesby in Sydney. Make no mistake about it, Gemma, Andrea went to hell and back in a handbasket. This is an incredibly courageous woman who made the decision to stand up to him and to leave, as opposed to stay in that marriage and put up with it.
The depths that this man went to, the depravity that he kind of showed Andrea, it's so surprising, the contrast, because he was a firefighter. His job was to save people. Do we know what he was like in his professional life? Did he have a different kind of face there?
Yes and no. I mean, I spoke to his former boss in the series, and he described him as a grey man, no personality, no emotion, which is typical of psychopaths. Didn't mix well. His army record told us that. He didn't mix well. His only interest was fishing, which is really interesting when you look at some of the events. This was a man who had the uncanny, awful ability to switch off from other humans. For example, Andrea wasn't allowed to have any family members or friends visit the house, and if she ever went against him, she would get a thrashing, an absolute thrashing. And at work, he was sarcastic, caustic to workmates, did only the job he had to do and no more. Interestingly, they recognised this in him very early in his career. So he wasn't really promoted, number one. And secondly, he wasn't sent front line to deal with people who were, for example, sitting in the street after their house had burnt down. He was shipped off out of there. So his job was to fight the fire, but not to deal with the people.
So he didn't have that compassion element.
Oh, that would be an understatement. He had nothing. But if you think of a grey man, it's perfect. Face the colour of cement, eyes as hard as cement. That's Leonard Warwick. One of the lead investigators, Kevin Wood, said to me, once you look into his ice cube eyes, you'll join a club that you don't want to be a part of. And I did look into those ice cube eyes in 2012 when I first started looking at the story for Sunday Night, Channel 7. And this is a man that makes you chill to the bone. He is, I don't like using the word evil. I think it's overrated, overused, particularly, in this day and age where true crime is so prevalent. But he's evil. When he lent into me and told me to get the F off his property, he meant it. There was no mistaking that this man would have done something to me, I think, that I didn't want him to do if I didn't take off.
Yeah, he sounds menacing. Did he hang around after Andrea separated? What was her living situation, and did he try and get involved in that?
Oh, absolutely, he hung around. He stalked her, he harassed her. He climbed through the window one night, for example, when she was living with her father and her brother Stephen and Trudy, and he threatened her father Leslie and said, get out of my way, you silly old bastard, something to that effect. He knew the layout of that house. He would just watch her. He'd turn up at Trudy's school and demand to see the headmistress and what's happening with my daughter. And of course, he didn't have custody. He wasn't allowed to do that. And Andrea would say to him, how do you know where I am? It's really chilling if you think about it, that even then, before mobile phones, before anything, any tracking devices that you could put in your car, anything, he would just know where she was.
Always watching.
Always watching. I describe him in my book as like a sewer rat. Scurrying around in the dead of night. You don't know where he is. You know he's there, but you can't find him. And he was hunting the hunters. When the police started surveilling him, he was hunting them. And this is a really, really dangerous individual.
I want to take us to February 1980. As you mentioned, Andrea is living with her brother, her father, and her daughter, and Stephen, her brother, goes missing. Was the family worried initially?
Not in the first few days. Andrea just thought, look, he'd gone off surfing with his mates. He loved surfing. This was a peace-loving young man. He'd go to India to hang out with a guru, as people did in the 70s. He was a vegetarian. He didn't have an enemy in the world, had a lot of friends who adored him. So at first she thought, he's with his girlfriend, or he's at work, or he's gone surfing. A few days later, she started to become concerned, and then she started to panic because she realised that his bedding was missing, but other things were still in his bedroom. She rang around. Have you seen him? No, he's not with us. And she told the police, I think my ex-husband Leonard has got something to do with this.
It wasn't long after that Stephen was found. Where was he found?
He was found in an eerily beautiful waterway in Sydney called Cowan Creek, which is in the Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park, about an hour from the centre of Sydney. I went out there actually when we were filming the series, and we went at night, and it was pitch black, lots of sandstone walls. Somebody who's going to put someone there from a boat, no one's going to see it happen. So that's where he was found, and he wasn't meant to be found. He'd been weighted down with 11 house bricks, but he rose, as I say in the book, like a helium balloon. It's a horrible thing to say if you have the imagery, but unless you release the gases from a body, the body will float. So that's what happened.
What happens next? Is Leonard arrested? Is he a suspect? What do the police do?
No, he's a suspect along with any other suspect who could have been a suspect. But if you consider, for example, that when I spoke to his friends, all those old surfer blokes who are now in their 60s, 70s, most of them weren't contacted by police, they said. People weren't contacted. And the family felt very little satisfaction with New South Wales Police and the way that Stephen's murder was investigated.
Well, it sounds like it wasn't really investigated.
Well, certainly they did their checks and balances, but was Leonard Warwick a suspect? Well, who knows? Certainly he was interviewed and there was an inquest, and he refused to answer any questions at that inquest, which is his right, his legal right. But it was, it was a bit cut and shut. Life goes on, and there was no justice for Stephen.
Stephen is considered by his family and by many Leonard's first victim. And we'll get to the convictions a bit later on. But in this particular instance, he wasn't found guilty of this crime. Why not in the end?
I think we need to be careful. in criticising Justice Garling's decision to find that it was a judge alone trial. So Justice Garling found, as you said, not guilty on many fronts, some of which we interrogate in the series. And frankly, we show that sometimes that is just not right, what he found, that it was possible, for example, for one man to move Stephen Blanchard's body. But he had to be careful. Decisions can be unpicked very easily at appeal if mistakes are made. So legal people, judges included, are very mindful of that. And Justice Garling did a meticulous job in his findings. But not much comfort to the family, I have to say, to walk away with a not guilty verdict.
Debbie, did Leonard ever have anything to do with Stephen?
Yeah, he did. So Leonard would keep Trudy beyond the access time that he was allowed, and he did this all the time. I mean, sometimes he would have her for a week over the access allowed by the courts. And so there was an occasion when Andrea went with Stephen, because she didn't drive, to get Trudy back from Leonard. And Stephen said to him, "Mate, look, we don't want any trouble here. We just want the baby back. Just give us the baby back." And he shut the door in his face. Beyond that, we know that Trudy adored Stephen. She trowed around after him as a littly. If you look at that situation, what motive would Leonard Warwick have to murder his brother-in-law? So I guess the only motive, if one was looking for one, would be that he was trying to teach Andrea a lesson. And what better way to teach someone a lesson than to strike at the very heart of their family?
Around the time of Stephen's death, Andrea and Leonard are going through court, the court we mentioned before. How are their proceedings playing out there?
Well, they were in and out of court. Andrea said to me one day, "I seem to spend my entire young life in court, either chasing access, getting judgments changed." So the first judge was Justice David Opaz, who was hearing, all the things that were going down, maintenance, custody, etc. And he was fed up with Leonard Warwick, completely ignoring the access orders he was making. And so he was ruling against him quite strongly in the family court, and Leonard Warwick did not like it. And one day he said to Andrea, "You don't have to worry about Justice Opaz anymore. He won't be here much longer." And she said, "What do you mean? Is he going on holiday?" He said, "He just won't be here."
Did she think anything of that?
She certainly did when Justice Opaz was murdered.
Yes, of course. But at the time, because that, it was a month later that, as you say, Justice Opaz was murdered. Was Andrea, worried for him during that time? Did she take that as a direct threat that Justice Opaz should be aware of?
No, I think she was just bewildered. What did he mean? Did he mean that he was going on holiday? And then she heard of the shooting. Justice Opaz, as we know, was assassinated at his courtyard gate. He lived with his beautiful wife, Kristen, 2 gorgeous little children. They were just having their dinner. The doorbell rang, the front gate doorbell, and little Josh, who was 4, said, "Daddy, don't answer the door, eat your tea." So he strode out to answer the door, and Leonard Warwick shot him. As soon as she heard this, Andrea told the police, "It's my husband. It's Leonard Warwick. He's done this."
But I guess at the time, there would be many disgruntled husbands to be kind of looking at, wouldn't there? Because Justice Opaz would be seeing so many people during a day.
Yeah, the day of his murder, he'd heard 40 cases. Can you imagine?
Wow.
40 cases just on one day alone. And he was known to be a dedicated, compassionate, but very strict judge. I mean, he did not muck around with people like Leonard Warwick. He put his foot down, and those two went head to head on a few occasions. But to assassinate a man at his front gate when his children and wife are inside having dinner, I mean, can you imagine anything more chilling? It is horrendous. And Kristen, the dog, started barking, and she went, "Oh, goodness, Daddy's taking a long time. What's he doing? I'll go and check." And there he was, dying on the ground. It's awful. And it's, Gemma, these images not just haunt me because I do the work, but Kristen Opaz was so haunted and so terrified by the fact that whoever had murdered her husband was not charged, that she packed up her little family and moved interstate. I mean, this was a woman who was, Sydney to her bootlaces, and she had to start again, all by herself, this grieving widow.
Because it's 4 years until Leonard murders again or tries to murder again. So there's 4 years in between there where, as you say, a family removes themselves. Andrea is still terrified. All this stuff's still going on.
Mm.
Who was the next judge that took over their case?
Justice Richard G. So he was a God-fearing, again, very compassionate, highly intelligent, lovely, lovely man. I met him before his death. And again, Leonard Warwick was stalking this family, sneaking around, trying to find access points. And he found them, and he planted a bomb on his doorstep. He had 2 children inside. His wife was in hospital. The house went like a pack of cards. It splintered. It completely splintered. But miraculously, Justice G survived, and so did the kids. Just before he'd gone to sleep, he was, as I said, God-fearing. He prayed. He prayed for the safety of his fellow judges. He prayed for his children. And he prayed for his wife. And he said, my prayers were answered.
You're listening to True Crime Conversations with me, Gemma Barth. I'm speaking with Walkley Award-winning crime journalist and author Debi Marshall about the family court murders. You've spoken to the lead investigator at the time. What similarities between these crimes did he see? Because they're 2 very different weapons, I guess, or acts of violence, a bomb and a gunshot.
Well, if you think about it, you've got an offender who's particularly cunning. That's really clever, don't you think?
Yeah.
You change your MO so that people get confused. What's going on here? Is this the same person? Mind you, he didn't change his MO after the first bomb. That remained the same right through his campaign of terror. But, they were confused. But they targeted him quite early in the piece. But they had other people on their list as well. There was a guy called Silvano Mariti, who was an excitable Italian, who completely, like Leonard Warwick, completely flouted access orders, took his kids from Sydney to Perth against all family court orders, did some time in jail, came out so embittered and said there will be blood running down the courtroom steps. But it wasn't Mariti. He wasn't the bomber. So, eventually, like water on a stone, drip, 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 they get to Leonard Warwick. It's Leonard Warwick.
But again, he's not really brought to justice yet. He's not arrested.
No. Then we have Pearl Watson.
Yeah, so this is the wife of the 3rd judge to see their case.
Exactly. So Justice G was in hospital and he couldn't hear the Andrea and Leonard case. So it was handed to Justice Watson. He is known as a taciturn, very, very strict, take no prisoners judge, lovely man, but very tough. And he came up against him and he wasn't mucking around at all with Leonard Warwick. And he made orders that, he had to vacate his house, that half that money had to go to Andrea. He just ignored them again. So meanwhile, Andrea's left the marriage, still living in hell. Pearl Watson's habit was to see Justice Watson off to work every morning. And she put her hand on the doorknob and she was literally blown through a brick wall. It's awful. It's so awful. Gemma, this was such a campaign of terror. It was so orchestrated, so organised, so chilling. But still, they don't charge him.
What's the public reaction by this point? Because we've had 3 judges targeted and we haven't mentioned that the courthouse is also bombed. So, 4 attacks on the judicial system. How's the public reacting?
Well, the courthouse was bombed and then a bomb was put under the bonnet of a car that was meant for Andrea's solicitor at the time. And the guy, imagine this, Sunday morning, he gets into his car, he puts the key in the lock. If he turned it, he would have been blown to smithereens. But he thought, I'm just going to open the bonnet. He opened the bonnet, and there was a bomb sitting there just ready to detonate as soon as that key was turned. This was a relentless campaign. Leonard Warwick did not stop. Nothing stopped him. So the police are chasing him. He's chasing the police. There was an occasion where surveillance guys said to Kevin Woods, one of the lead investigators, Kevin, we're getting a little concerned because we can see that Leonard Warwick is standing outside police headquarters over the road. He's just watching. Kevin Woods himself had photos of Leonard Warwick all around the house, and he said to his wife and his kids, if you ever see this man anywhere near where we live, you call me immediately and you call 000 because he was the target.
So they knew who their man was.
Oh, they knew, but circumstantial evidence in those days, the laws of similar fact evidence were different than they are today, and the coroner did not push it to public prosecutions, even though he had Warwick before him on a couple of occasions. That didn't happen. They didn't have DNA in those days, although they did have his blood group. And they got that blood group from the final act of absolute terrorism, which was Leonard Warwick blowing up the Jehovah's Witness Hall.
Yeah, I want to talk about this because what's the connection here? This is Andrea's sister's community, is it not?
Absolutely. So Andrea's sister Judy is a Jehovah's Witness, and they had decided that things were getting so hot in Sydney with the bombings that they fled Sydney together with their kids and they moved up to the North Coast. Leonard Warwick was enraged. He wanted to know where his wife was. He wanted to know where his daughter was, and he started targeting Judy. He'd been doing it before they left Sydney, but it ramped up. And to do that, he started approaching elders of the Jehovah's Witness congregation. I believe that, Judy Moria is hiding my wife, Andrea. Where have they moved to? And of course, they didn't tell him. And he became, more and more angry that where they were was being withheld from him. So he took his revenge and he climbed through a window in the Jehovah's Witness Hall the week before the bombing, and he lost a lot of blood. He cut himself. But that didn't stop him. The police went, they looked, there was no connection made, of course, between Leonard Warwick and this event. Why would there be? And a week later, Joy Wykes and her husband Graham, with two of their 3 children, plus an entire congregation of about 170 people, including babies, were simply bent to prayer at about 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and the bomb had been planted underneath the Speaker's dais. The Speaker, David Winder, was blown up through the ceiling and landed outside. It miraculously survived, but Graham Wykes, who was sitting in the front seat with his wife Joy, was killed instantly, and scores of other people seriously injured.
So this is like the biggest escalation so far. There's not just one person, there's dozens upon dozens that are injured, one person dead, but dozens more are injured.
Absolutely. But if you think, for example, about the Pearl Watson bombing, I had a look at that apartment block, which has been rebuilt exactly as it was then. That building shook as if it was in an earthquake. People were injured from that. People on the Justice G bombing, they could feel the reverberations of the bomb. It was just miraculous that more people weren't killed or injured. Absolutely miraculous. The Jehovah's Witness bombing, there was a 3-month-old baby in a pram. I am so outraged about this, as a mother and a grandmother. A 3-month-old baby, and a huge beam fell across the pram. And, that baby suffered terrible injuries. Shocking. But Leonard Warwick, the collateral damage to him.
This was the last attack, though. It's the last time he plants a bomb. Why do they stop? Why did the attacks stop?
Because Andrea, living then on the North Coast, got the news that the Jehovah's Witness Hall has been bombed. and she went to pieces. And so did Judy. Andrea was sobbing, saying, "It's Leonard. I have got to stop these killings." So she made the ultimate sacrifice. She gave Leonard their daughter, Trudy, and the bombing stopped.
How? How did she do that, Debbie?
I don't
Giving up
know.
her daughter to someone that was like this.
Well, he loved Trudy, and Trudy loved him. She was 5. I don't know. I said to her, "How does a mother do that?" She said, "Debbie, what choice did I have? People were being killed. I couldn't live with my conscience." He wanted Trudy at all costs, and he'd proven that. The police weren't arresting him. Everyone was petrified of him. Everyone was petrified of him, Gemma.
Yeah.
With good cause. You know, when I decided in 2012 to go after him, the now late coroner, Kevin Waller, I said, "You know, I'm writing a book," and he said, "Be careful. Be careful. The prime suspect is still out there. This could get you killed." I'd been warned by Kevin Woods when I went alone to walk up Leonard Warwick's driveway when I approached him that day when I was doing the story for Sunday night. He said, "Debbie, this man's a killer." And actually my daughter said to me just yesterday, "Mum, were you not thinking about your family, about the possible repercussions for not just yourself?" And I said, "No, I didn't think about that. I knew the dangers. I absolutely knew the dangers. I was told, don't prod that snake."
So why did you prod it?
Because I was outraged, as we all should have been. Outraged that by the time I got to this story in 2012, this was still unsolved, the coldest of unsolved homicides, series of homicides, for more than 3 decades. Every man and woman I spoke to, Gemma, said they had not been approached by New South Wales police for more than 30 years.
Yeah, wow.
How do you solve something when you're not looking at it? It was subject to periodic reviews, paper reviews. Kevin Woods said to me, "Debbie, you need to be telling the police that they need to check the blood on the window from the Jehovah's Witness hall."
Yeah, so it's this blood, isn't it, that basically is his undoing?
Absolutely. So they checked the blood, and guess what? Leonard Warwick is O group. Guess what the blood is? It's O group. Is that enough? Apparently not. They still don't arrest him. And they knew that in 1985. They knew that straight after the bombing. But he walks around for decades. He remarries. He has another family. He lives on the outskirts of Sydney. He's wandering around like a free-range chook. And he's left this devastation in his wake. So why did I go after him? Because I was outraged. You know, I could not believe that he had not been brought to justice. And that's what you do, I guess, when you sign up for the work.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a crime journalist, well, you've got to take the heat in the kitchen, I guess. But I have to say, Gemma, that walk back down the driveway when I turned my back on him was the longest walk of my life.
Oh, I can imagine. You would have been scared he would come up behind you, yeah?
I was scared he was going to shoot me in the back. And I was praying, please don't shoot me in the back. And I'm not a praying woman, but please don't shoot me in the back.
So he was arrested a few years after you started looking into the case, because they do reopen it as a cold case. He's arrested in 2015 on more than 20 charges, including the murder of Stephen. He is arrested on that. How does the trial play out? I'm guessing you were there.
I was there for some of it, not much, because I don't live in Sydney and it was COVID, so it was very difficult to get there, unfortunately. It was an incredibly long trial, 2 years. As I said, it was judge alone. And they got him on everything but Stephen Blanchard, his brother-in-law. So in the series, I interrogate that with my team. What happened to Stephen Blanchard? If Leonard Warwick didn't murder him, who did? Who else would have the motive to murder Stephen Blanchard, a peace-loving surfie with not an enemy in the world? So, you know, we have a really good look at that murder. It was, you know, bittersweet, obviously, for everyone. I was watching the convictions live from my home and I rang everyone straight after that. And, you know, there were tears, of course. There was relief. They're very grateful.
Have you closed the book on this case, or are you still looking into it? Because obviously there is no charge, there's no one in jail for Stephen's murder yet. Are you still hopeful that Andrea and Judy and the family can get closure?
Absolutely. And as I said, we interrogated in the series, and we're hoping, really, really hoping that somebody comes forward. We're really hoping that, you know, some of the things we found and some of the things we play out in the series that do actually somewhat contradict what Justice Scarling found. Maybe enough, maybe for Cold Case to take another look at that. I mean, they did put their brief together and they did present that, but just didn't get over the line in a guilty verdict. So somebody coming forward or the police having another look at it. I mean, certainly there are other things that I want to look at now. I've had so many emails from people, so much contact from people, lawyers, etc. Debbie, have a look at this. Have you thought about having a look at this? Ask the police this. But, you know, my experience is that the police in New South Wales bat me back and say, this is an ongoing investigation. Well, I hope it is.
I really enjoyed chatting with Debi. Her knowledge about this case is astounding. And in her time looking into Leonard Warwick, she discovered that his sister has been missing since 1965.
Is she still alive? Is she living under an assumed name? Does she not want to be found? Is she in witness protection? What do we know about her? It's a fascinating trail that goes cold but leaves so many questions.
We have an episode about Eileen available exclusively to Mamamia subscribers. And if you're not a Mamamia subscriber yet, it's really easy to sign up. It costs as little as $5.75 a month and gives you unlimited access to all Mamamia content. There's a link in our show notes where you can sign up. True Crime Conversations is a Mamamia podcast hosted by me, Gemma Barth, and my executive producer is Moylan.